Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Camera Tuesday, we're going to talk about Panasonic Lumix GH6. So let's dive right into it. Now, you have to understand GH6 in the context of GH5 simply because it was a very big deal when it was launched in March 2017. Micro Four Third was the early generations of mirrorless camera, and that point in time nobody was taking mirrorless seriously. Like Nikon literally said mirrorless is a fashion sense that will blow over. They got blown over. So reality is GH5 was a very big deal simply because it became a very beloved tool and it was really good at lot of things, meaning as a stills camera it could not beat a full frame. Let's be real here, it could not beat 5D or something like that. However, it was so good in terms of video that it became basically beloved tool of indie filmmakers. Basically you could easily find rigs like this where people have cages on top of it, cinema lenses on it, external monitors, V-mount batteries. Basically people were using this as a full-fledged cinema camera. The reason for that is at that point in time there was nothing that you can even come close to the video output of this puppy in terms of codecs, in terms of resolution, in terms of frame rate. It was way ahead of the pack. There were cinema cameras, undeniably so, but again bank balance, and there were the gap was so huge that you could either rent a cinema camera for a few days or you can buy this puppy. So it became very huge success in that regard, and many people including YouTubers have started their careers with this puppy, meaning it's not just a oh lol it's some niche case scenario. No, it's it is a very big successful tool. And video function that this was allowing, be mindful, even though back then when this launched, this 30-minute limit was there, meaning if you wanted to remove that 30-minute limit you had to pay extra for it. They did that extra payment, and that's why it did not have 30-minute limit. So it was way ahead of its time. However, even back then people were only noticing two core factors. Factor number one, the autofocus performance was not good enough. Now I said autofocus is not good enough, then why the heck indie filmmakers were loving this puppy? Because in cinema industry nobody uses basically autofocus. Everybody relies on manual focus because it's very deliberate, meaning it focuses only moves when you want it to. You can notice that in cinema where it's a person is disoriented, then the slowly focus will pull into it, and then it's they are trying to tell a story. So in those sort of scenario you need control of autofocus. So in those sort of time manual focus works best. So they are used to it, and other people, they tried to learn it. Some people did learn it, some did not. Those who did not move to other systems, those who did stick with this. So that part could have been managed to many certain extent. However, light quality was another issue. You have to understand this aspect of it. Micro Four Third was the primary reason of this being born into existence was they basically, camera company kind of misjudged. Their assumption was silicon is expensive. That is absolutely true, but they forgot that lithography technology is becoming much better. So you have silicon wafer, you basically design your sensor or not on top of it. Generally they want to make smaller units simply because if one is defective you only lose a small portion of that silicon disc. Those discs are costing millions of dollars. So that's why even companies like Nikon and Canon, they started to make APS-C. In early days, basically what we call yield factor, meaning if you wanted to make 10, you consume the disk equivalent of 10. How much you are actually getting out of it, that was very bad. Meaning if you try to make a disk that is 5 full frame sensor, good luck if all 5 of them works. Most of the time yield rate was very bad. So they took a gamble, they made it smaller. Again, yield rate improved, but again you still had the same amount of bad sectors, but because it was spread out, you had okay, I'm getting 75% usable system. They wanted to that, and they played a gamble on that. That will never change. It changed. Basically technology development during this silicon industry became so exponentially better. Now you can have a 65mm sensor and almost nothing will be broken in it. Heck, we have literal processors that have million cores into it. I'm not even joking. Literally this size processors consumes around 200 kilowatts or something like that. That exists right now. So silicon technology improved way too much. So that idea that sensor will always be expensive and that's why we have to use small sensor did not pay out. And physics does not like small sensors. And that same goes even with negative, meaning if you're familiar with old negative video formats, there was 8mm, which was garbage, but again it did came up with the advantage, the handycam kind of scenario. Then there was 16mm, bit useful. Then you had 35mm, really useful. Then you had big IMAX of back in the days, 70mm. So you get that point. If you want quality, you have to go bigger. So sensor was always a limiting factor on this, meaning if you have the same technology utilizing the sensor and you had made the sensor bigger, like a full frame sensor, full frame will always bitch slap this puppy. That's because of the physics. That's why you have Hubble and then you have James Webb telescope. the bigger is better. Physics loves that fact. That's why the light quality, the dynamic range, the low noise performance, the feel of it, meaning that it was much better than handycams, but it was not like whoa. It was like, it was good, but it was not whoa. So many people left because of light quality issues. So basically GH6, this puppy, is update for modern competition. It was very ahead of its time in 2017. So companies like, okay, now it's starting to get outdated. Let's release something new for the modern era, basically era of 2022. So this is an evolution. It's not a revolution. GH5 was a revolution because it was like way ahead of the pack. This puppy is not that much. However, it does have refined some technologies to god tier levels, meaning IBIS. The IBIS on this puppy makes all other IBIS looks like bitch, please. Like you don't have IBIS, you have something that pretends to be IBIS. Now why they can do it while no other company like Sony, Nikon and Canon can do that? Simply because of physics. Because while you have a smaller sensor, it has what we call smaller inertia, meaning moving it quickly is rather easy compared to moving a giant sensor. It's physics based, you cannot tamper around it. So that's why, like, even when we are making high speed train, we want to make it as light as possible for responsiveness. So IBIS on this puppy is what, like, other people will be very lucky if they can reach 5 stops. This puppy like 7 stop, bro. And there is another advantage of that, because the megapixel count is kind of limited, 25 megapixel. They have tried to add pixel shift technology, meaning move it one half of a pixel, basically quarter pixel left, quarter pixel right, quarter pixel, like do this multiple times and stack the images, and you can achieve 100 megapixel. And be mindful, this is 100 true megapixels. It's not just taking the photo and stretching it, meaning the output, if you are taking a photo of, let's say, a static painting in a static environment, you will find the quality output is really good. I mean, like, whoa, kind of good. Like, you have a solid tripod, a static image, good. Because the IBIS is so goddamn good, they have trusted the system with handheld mode also, and it has enough AI also in it where it can detect. It's like, let's say a plane is moving, it's like, okay, let's isolate that part, let's not try to stack it because it will look garbage. It will just isolate that part, put just one image, and everything else that is static, for example buildings, trees, things of that nature, it will keep stacking them. So it's rather impressive that they have achieved pixel shift for 100 megapixel and the output is good, meaning it can almost bitch slap almost all full frame cameras unless they have very exceptionally high quality lenses. Now it's like some G master lenses or some red ring lenses which are really sharp, prime specifically, then yeah, then it will be like, you know, almost neck and neck. But you have to do some serious effort to beat this 100 megapixel. Again, it's not really useful for most scenarios, but again, if you want that kind of scenario where it's like, you know, you're doing product photography, this 100 megapixel could allow you to compete to much higher level equipments. It has proper 5.7K. So many people are like, you know, want to exceed 4K, but want to exceed in such a way where they have still control over it. Meaning, let's say your framing is larger than 4K, then you want to crop in so you can rotate it properly. This was done in basically House of Cards. Basically they add more than 4K shooting, and because they always wanted that symmetry, they were very serious about symmetry. Basically every table in House of Cards, you will notice that is absolutely serious, especially shots that are like, you know, absolutely serious, they're damn straight. It's like, dude, did somebody put a like, you know, level there? Is like, you know, this has to be level, because they had that flexibility in post where they can, like, you know, adjust it. They were very serious about that. So you can do something like that here also. And if you want to down res, then also you will get quality boost a little bit. So it is good. It also has inbuilt ProRes video format. Now ProRes video format is an industry standard, so everybody loves this. Now consequently, it's only available in basically high-end equipments of cinema grade levels, basically Canon C series cameras, Sony FX series cameras, but not for you know, low-end equipment, something like this. But this has it. So benefit, you can record on CFast Express card, because again the bandwidth required for ProRes is high, so you have to use CFast Express card. It does allow you to record that, and that is really awesome, simply because that means your editing time goes down, because the format is well supported and it's super easy to edit. Your time, you save time. And to give you a context like how important is that ProRes, many times people have like cameras like Nikon and Canon or even Sony, they will literally have HDMI output. If it supports raw HDMI output, it will go into Ninja 5 and they will record ProRes on Ninja and then edit on that, because it is that efficient compared to every other codecs. So ProRes is a very useful tool, and it also has inbuilt cooling, because sensor never really actually heats up unless you have something bad done to it. Sensor most of the time is really cool. However, the processor generally cooks itself. So processor was always the limitation of medium, basically full frame cameras. So Canon R5C learned this. It's like, just put a goddamn heatsink, just put a fan there and forget about it. So same they're doing. Basically there is a heatsink and a fan. Now you may be like, GH5 was never known for overheating. Well, yes, that's absolutely true, but they had limitation. They could not push push the sensor to basically processor to its upper limit, because processor will overheat. So this time they are like, let it flex, and they are promising. Again, be very mindful. At this point in time, they can only do ProRes for 5.7K, but they want to do ProRes for almost everything, meaning 4K, Full HD, everything. Again, that does require a bit more oomph out of processor. Consequence, processor will heat up. Benefit, you have the fan and the cooling system to take care of it. That's awesome. And for long endurance recording, it also has power delivery, which is now properly supported. So you can charge this. Basically, you can record for hours like a proper cinema camera. So it is an evolution on GH5. A lot of, again, GH5 was really good, so they just tweaked it much. However, this is more or less the same story. There is nothing new about it. There is nothing. It has the same goddamn problem of not utilizing proper autofocus. Again, I'm getting conflicting report. Primary report I'm getting that makes sense to me is like, because the sensor is so small and light quality is already bad in this, if they made it even smaller by adding basically pixel shift technology, like, you have to create sensor embedded into the main image sensor, it would have compromised the image quality too much to where it's like, people would have not bought it, even if autofocus would have become better. And autofocus algorithms are a completely different beast. You have to know how to design the processor to make autofocus algorithm work properly. So even if they had a sensor from any vendor where it's like, take this sensor, this has face detect and has image quality performance that is, good enough, again, they may not have the algorithm needed to milk that puppy. So the autofocus is still the issue. And right now, as in 2022, this camera changed the game, Canon R5C, because this camera flat out bitch slaps any camera in the market at this point. Yes, it is expensive, undeniably so, but it is full frame, meaning shallow depth of field. It's not something you can create in post. It has to be done in sensor. This puppy can do that. It is 8K, meaning 5.5, 5.7K, bro, please. 8K. It's on a whole different level, and it's a raw for around 30 and 60 fps. So it's on a whole different level, and not to mention a proper quality autofocus. Now it is absolutely true, the image stabilization is not that great. Here's the funny thing. You can add image stabilization to a camera. That's how all cinema cameras have been dealt. Back in old days, they used to have what we call basically motion gimbal sets. Glide cams, yeah, back in the days we used to call steady cam, glide cam. Now we have gimbals which are using electronics and motors. You get that point. Like, you can add stabilization to a camera, you cannot add autofocus to a camera. If you need it, again, then you can't do anything about it. But if you need stabilization, you're like, what, I'm not happy with the stabilization of this puppy, you're like, okay, let's add it on a gimbal. I have been to weddings, Indian weddings, and lot people are using Sony. Nobody's happy with the Sony's image stabilization. Then why they are using it? Because you can fix that issue. You can have a gimbal and forget about it. But you cannot fix anything you have to deal with when autofocus is an issue. You can't do anything about it. And it needed to be revolutionary. There is another aspect to the market at this point in time. There are 3 working formats, 4 if you want to count medium format, but 3 major format, that is micro four third, APS-C, and full frame. And all 3 are dying. Realistically speaking, basically how many units are being sold, that number is going down drastically. And in all these 3, micro four third is worst hit. And to give you a context, there were 2 main players in micro four third industry, Olympus and Panasonic. Olympus gone, so 50% loss already happened. On top of that, the whole industry as a camera, I'm not talking about the format inside it, I'm talking the whole camera industry, that's also dying. Because again, while mobile phones are horrifyingly close, I mean, like, to give you a context, watch basically Samsung Galaxy S22 zoom performance. How the heck it has zoom performance that literally requires a lens that is this size, and it is doing that on like a phone that you can put in your pocket? How the heck it can do that? It exceeds what human eye can see. It's like, how the heck that happened? That's something that you can put in your pocket. Because camera companies that are working with mobile manufacturers, they are working their ass off to give you the most amazing experience. While camera companies like this, they're like, we're not going to give you this function, we're not going to give you this, we're not going to give you this, we do not give you Bluetooth audio communication. Basically, you get that point. Basically, camera industry is not doing well because cameras are not good. So in a shrinking environment, in a shrinking format, this GH6 is just not good enough. It's like, at best case scenario. So like, they could have done many things. For example, the first flaw they have, like, this puppy also has this flaw, meaning it does not have dual CFast card slot. Yes, it would have made it a bit more expensive, but it would have solved one of the issue, where it's like, you can do safe recording of both of them. It is important for indie shoots, because many times you can't just do retake, oh, my card corrupted. That does happen. That's why like almost all pro equipments have dual card slot, and all servers have like multiple redundant hard drive. You have to have redundancy. So they could have added that. They could have added gen log, because while timecode is good, it's just a metadata on top of a video file. Gen lock is a trigger event, meaning if you are doing long format recording, you need gen lock, because gen lock triggers externally, meaning if you have an audio recorder or a signal is generated from this puppy, it can trigger the audio recorder to snap properly. So it can record for hours without having any drift. And this also has an advantage, especially in VR environment, which a lot of people are utilizing nowadays, especially in porn industries. You have two cameras and you gen lock them, then only it can trigger properly. And then if you feed that footage to your basically goggles, you will not get headache because it's triggering properly. You need gen lock. And again, Panasonic is the only company that gives gen lock in around 2000 in that box camera setup. Why did not they port that technology here? It does not make sense. And the only technology that is missing right now in a camera, basically full frame industry, is global shutter. Basically, and global shutter is not just like a flexing point, it's actually useful. For example, think of it this way, like helicopter blades are straight. When you shoot it through a rolling shutter, it looks like, well, floating. And like again, tail lights, you're like what the hell is happening? Now, is that an issue? Yes, if you have to deal with VFX. And again, this looks unnatural inherently. Like for example, guitar strings, they look like a wave. Guitar string does not vibrate like that, they vibrate like this. But because of the rolling shutter issue, you will get into this. So rolling global shutter was the only thing they could have added that alone could have made this, you know what, shut up and take my money. And you can see the importance of global shutters so much that Red Camera Cinema company, they're like, you know what, we want to make a small company and basically small body, and they are like, you know what, let's put global shutter into it. Red Komodo. What is the unique selling point? It is a small sensor, but what's the unique selling point? It has global shutter. Every Tom, Dick and Harry who uses that is like, dude, I did not knew that I can do VFX that easily. I can do tracking, masking, all of that so easily. Simply because again, if you're tracking mask on like a straight object, it's super easy. It's like, how the heck you track mask on something that's like going yellow? Good luck with that. So again, these three things are super easy. Again, global shutter did require them to buy some from someone else. Again, if they are not giving autofocus, this was a good compromise. Gen lock, they have done it. They could have done here. Dual CFast slot, again, that's the reality of it. Basically, everything in this puppy is exactly GH5 with just a bit more better. And not to mention, when other companies have reached 8K, selling the phone like 5.7K, it's not that impressive anymore. So that's the whole point. And market have selected full frame as a champion. Whether you like it or not does not matter. At this point in time, full frame is the healthiest, meaning from lens manufacturers to sensor manufacturers to body manufacturers, all of them agree that full frame is the king. Not to mention Panasonic themselves have made full frame. So you get that point. Full frame is at this point in the champion. And whenever you are talking about camera body, it's a full ecosystem. You can't just like, oh, body is great. Everything else also has to matter, simply because you can have the most amazing highest resolution sensor going with your Micro Four Thirds system. Here's the lens optics has to also be on the same levels. Micro Four Third is not that successful. And even the camera company that has let's say Blackmagic, what is the common thing people do? They buy Canon EF lens to put on Micro Four Third. That's why Micro Four Third lens ecosystem is not as healthy as it should be. Like most of the lenses are like 4 or 5 years old, meaning they are like at a point where other companies would be at Mark II or Mark III. So you can buy much higher quality lenses on full frame. So for whom this camera was released? Well, if you are already a Micro Four Third user, this is last hurrah for you. And if you have already invested in the lens system, so yes, it does work. Now, if you are, would you ever, should buy this as a, first system? Well, hell no. Unless you are dealing with only static subject. Again, many times, let's say what you are doing like this, it should work, but good luck with that. Or you want only deal with manual focus. Again, whatever your work requirement is, if manual is the only thing, this is really good in terms of raw performance. It is really good. But here's the reality of it. At this point in time, in economy of scale, most people will be better served either with Sony and Canon. Now, the reason why I'm removing Nikon is that Nikon have finally cracked video autofocus. They have cracked it in basically flagship system. That processor, X processor, has to come down to lower end at the lower budget. Then only I can say, yeah, most people can afford that. Right now, it's unaffordable, but it should come down to prices by the end of this year. So at this point in time, if you buy a Sony, which has almost same price as A7 Mark IV, now you're like, okay, this does not go, ProRes and all that. Again, if you are out of focus, ProRes does not matter that much. So, and again, if your dynamic range is not that good, what the hell you're gonna do with ProRes? If your image performance is not that good, or if 25 megapixel versus 33 megapixel, you get that point. If you do not, you cannot add shallow depth of field. Yes, you can add stabilization to this puppy by utilizing gimbals. That's how many wedding photographers are utilizing this. Again, yes, it's an extra step, but you can do it. You can't do anything about the focus. You can't do anything about the low image performance of that, physics based. So that's why. Another aspect that really matters is lens selection. At this point in time, lenses available for full frame is basically lower in cost, meaning you have to pay much lower prices, much lower weight also, meaning you don't even have that magical advantage of, oh, the lenses are small. No, it's so much smaller simply because of better optical designs and higher performance, meaning because they have been pushed by every other company making. Sigma is making, Tamron is making, Sony is making, Nikon is making, Canon is making. Every company is working their ass off to make their lens lighter and as high quality as possible. Because of that hyper competition, you have hyper high quality output. You have really good lenses, meaning even something as like, you know, low megapixel as like 25 megapixel, you can put like modern full frame lens, so you're like, damn, the output is really good because lens is that optically perfect. So that's why, unless you have already invested in micro four third, there is not even a single reason to invest into this. Yes, it does have some niche cases, but most of the time you will be like, for one or two good things, you are like sacrificing way too much. As a whole ecosystem wise, it's really unhealthy at this point in time. It really needed to be the next gen kind of scenario, but it's not that good. It's like, okay, it's like, you know, that 30-minute recording limit, again, it has been removed by Sony like for past 2 years because the law has been changed. The European Union law that was adding that 30-minute limit was removed basically 2 years ago. So all Sony cameras have removed it. Even Canon's basically R5C have removed it because now they have cooling fan that can, you know, record at 8K unlimited. So you get that point, like that 5.7K does not matter that much. You can get 8K in two cameras right now, A1 and basically even Nikon's flagship and Canon. So you get that point, like 5.7K does not matter as much. And buying those cameras, you get much higher quality autofocus. You can do much more oomph out of it in terms of quality, color quality. So that's why it's not really as desirable as you would think, unless you have already invested in that. Then this is last hurrah. So this was my presentation on GH6. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please hit the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.